All right, so today's question is about how you can operate effectively as a husband and wife team in a business if you are in such a situation, which quite a number of my clients are in actually. Coincidentally, I have no idea why, but I probably attract people like that because I have a fairly decent relationship with my wife too. Although we have separate businesses, we work in very close proximity in the house. We both work from our homes typically, and so probably have a lot more distinctions in how husbands and wives can work together. And of course, spouses of the same gender as well probably applies to them as well. And I've had a couple of clients in that category as well. So what are the distinctions? As always, I start with distinctions and then try to go abstract distinctions perhaps, but I try to go towards more specific, concrete practices. So the first distinction is the distinction of awareness. There are three distinctions I'm going to cover: awareness, partnership, and roles. ROLES. Awareness, partnership, and roles. So awareness. It's important, imperative to actually bring awareness to your day-to-day activities if you're working together in a business. What is the awareness you want to look at? Well, the one awareness is stark, is to detect how you listen to each other. What do I mean by that? When you listen, you typically, almost all of us, all human beings really, listen through filters. You could say through the filters of opinions or judgments about yourself. They're colored by your beliefs, your values, the things that you grew up with, your social conditioning, perhaps even your genetics to a great extent, not a certain extent at least. Probably colored by your gender as well and what you think about gender. So they are the filters through which you listen to your partner. And it's imperative to learn how to do that, to learn how to create some awareness of how you listen, because most people think their opinions are truth. So you see this between husband and wives. Okay, she's just that way. She just doesn't know how to manage her finances. Oh, he's just that way. He's just a selfish brute when it comes to, who's in charge of the business. Or he's very dominating when it comes to finances, etc., etc. And I've heard this on both sides of the genders. I mean, it's really no gender exclusiveness when it comes to any kind of complaint. Financial complaints from either partner could be about either gender, really. So there's a coloring of your partner, you could say, that colors your listening. So for example, if it comes to financial issues in the business, you may think that your partner doesn't know how to keep his record straight, just useless at it, and so you just assume the worst all the time, which can really color your relationship, and you tend to make him or her wrong, etc., etc., etc. Why is this important to do? Well, because if you don't detect what's really going on, that it's really an opinion driving it all, not the truth, then if you continue doing that, you'll be essentially mindless. You're in a mindless, insane thing where you keep coming up with the same judgment and hence the same results or actions and not getting anywhere. So to prevent insanity, the first step is to detect the awareness. Now there's other stages, but that's probably the most important thing for you, and I don't want to give all the other stages because it take a long time, frankly, to go over them in a short video like this. So it's really awareness. The biggest awareness is really to bring in the listening. Now, one sub-distinction under listening is to denote or understand the costs and the payoffs of your listening. Because whenever you listen to someone like that or in a particular way, there's always some costs and payoffs to it. So if you listen to your partner like he is useless, so he can't do a damn thing, then there's a certain set of costs and a certain set of payoffs. Why the heck would you continue doing it, right? There has to be some payoff to it. So the costs are typically self-evident. It costs you your relationship, it costs you your business, making money, happiness, joy while you're working with that person. Payoffs may be a little difficult to notice, and I'll give you one because there's several. But one of them is typically that you get to actually make the other person wrong. Now, why is this a payoff, you might think? Well, it's a payoff because we think from brain science that, actually we know from brain science that the same areas that light up in your brain under a brain scan when you have a pleasurable experience, like eating chocolate, light up when you make somebody wrong, or you hold on to a particular position about that person, or you refuse to forgive that person. Those same areas light up. It's a pleasurable experience, perhaps. Now, this is not scientifically fully verified, but I think it's a fairly plausible theory. It could also account for why people love to hear bad news. You know, why bad news sells so much. Because in some sense they get to be right about it. Even though there are millions of children dying every year, you can get to be right about it, right? There you go again, corporate America, killing people, killing kids, right? And you get to be right about that. And you get to hold on to a position, but also the righteousness is another payoff, which is it gets to have you avoid or be distracted by or distracted from having to deal with your own stuff and being fully accountable and responsible for the mess that you actually partially created, whether you think you're just a small part of it or a big part. It doesn't matter. You're still someone who could make a difference, but you're electing not to. You may think, well, I'm only one of 7 billion people. What difference could I possibly make? But then, if you continue complaining about it, then you got to somehow face the time, the stark question: why do you spend so much time holding on to this position rather than doing something about it? Similarly, when it comes to husband and wife teams, the question I always pose for people, and this is one of the practices, is what are you committed to? Are you committed to the payoffs, making someone wrong? Or are you committed to getting rid of the costs and creating something different? So that's the awareness. The next distinction is one of partnership. And partnership is very simply put where you're clear about what you're committed to, preferably in a very specific, measurable way to your partner and vice versa. If you're in the same business especially, you want to be clear about, okay, what is it that you're committed to producing as a result? Not just as a role, but as a result. It's better to, in fact, more effective to manage your results rather than your roles in a matter. If you're the CFA, the chief financial officer of the company, then you have a role. But if you don't have specific objectives that you can promise your partner, then you got really very little to manage, you know, because you can make assumptions about your roles, but it's difficult to make assumptions about clear objectives that you promise. So if you're a CFO, you want to promise, okay, you know, at least we make at least 45% profit over expenses next year. You know, and make a very clear promise for that. Now that's something measurable that your partner can now count on you for. In exchange, you know, your partner makes a commitment or promise to you as well, and he or she says, you know, what I'm promising is that we'll hire at least 5 team members who will stay on throughout the year and actually produce a 20% increase in productivity, measurable in our business, right? So now you have a Loctite agreement. You're clear what your expectations are from either side, and they're measurable. That's very key. It's very key to do that. Now there are many steps to this. You know, you want to create a mission statement, make sure everything's in alignment. But I'm not going to go through that again. You know, I keep saying it in each video, but I hope you understand that it takes quite a lot of complexity to explain all of this. That's why we have coaching programs. But in simplifying it, really, you want to have the exchange of those expectations. And then you want to declare them. And the next stage is to make sure you have a system in place that keeps track of the progress. Is she providing the results, the expectations? Are you providing the results or expectations back on a monthly basis? You know, performance milestones. Are you on track for the year and delivering your promises to her, and vice versa? You want to have a system in place that periodically checks that, manages it, and makes sure that you're on track. If you don't have that system, then you're in what I call fantasy land, or bukaka land. That's what I say. Bukaka means nonsense. And I encourage you not to go into bukaka land, because it's not a very pleasant place to be in. Although you can avoid a lot of things there, but you're not providing any kind of joyful participation in the business and producing some good deals of money and income and satisfaction. So that's the partnership part. The last distinction is the roles that you want to play, or the clarification of roles. Now, again, many sub-distinctions underneath roles, but the one that I find most useful to share is something that the author of the Blueprint for Billionaires, I think that's the name of the book. I met him one time. Anyway, this author wrote a book called The Blueprint. I'll find his name. I'll put it on the description below my YouTube video here. But the idea is very simple in terms of roles. There's someone who's internal facing and there's someone who's external facing. By the way, most billionaires actually typically have an internal facing partner and an external facing partner, whether they're husband or wife or not, doesn't matter. So if you're husband and wife and you're working together, you want to have someone preferably who's internal facing. Internal facing means they're managing the internal operations of the business, which includes the operations, the day-to-day work, the management of the team, etc. External facing is more about marketing, outreach, finding clients, etc. Looking for investment, funding, that kind of stuff. So, why do you want to have that? What's the advantage of that? Well, it's a separation of duties, so you don't have to have someone overlapping, and people can do what they're best at. Typically, people are good in one of those two areas, and not all the time. Some people are good in both. Some people are good only in one. Some people are not good at either, but they can learn. And so if you separate the duties, there's a better chance that you can have a division of labor, and thus have people doing what they're best at, and probably have a better level of focus in your business as well. So I hope that makes a difference for you. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Take care. Have a great evening.